Fifi! Fifi! They begin to listen. I wish speaking there. You get very poor upbringing. I tell you. Now many times I don't call you in a turn. You want to make you turn? Wait me at the camp. You see that you don't start at them again. You don't start. You begin to turn that. You want to turn on a train. Begin to transform to our house. Now you need to do so. Hi, Mama, Jack, all people that wish over the house. Now wish you get witch. You get witch. I tell you.
Once upon a time, there was a mother. She would drive to school to pick up her son, to take her son to therapy. She did that for 1 year. And every time she got to this stop sign, the young fella in the back said, her son will say, octagon. How many of you looked at that sign and saw an octagon? None of you. See that? That child for 1 year kept saying, octagon. Every time the mom got there, octagon. And this mother is wondering, where is this child seeing this octagon? Looking around and saying, but what is this? And she brushed it off. Like, this child just likes to be throwing out shapes for no good reason. What is octagon at this moment? But guess what that mother was doing? See that sign? It's a stop sign. So when the mother got to the stop sign, guess what she did? She did not stop. She slows down and just boom on the highway. Slow down, boom, and just every single time. So for 1 year, this little boy kept saying, octagon, octagon. And then one day, the mom, there was a truck driving by, and she had to stop for longer than she did. And when he said octagon, she said, let me look around. And she looked around, and she's like, oh my God, it's the stop sign. This child has been telling the mother, stop. But all she could not decipher and was not able to decode it. It took her 1 whole year to figure out.
I went for a conference for 2 days. Before then, I knew nothing. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm hooked. And today I'm bringing to you someone who's seen different parts of this world. This is someone that you should listen to, someone who speaks with candor, someone who is very passionate about this. And what are we even talking about? Because I know some of you don't even know what ASD is. We're talking about autism. Yeah, you want to stop clicking because you think it doesn't concern you. It does concern you. If you look next door, there's someone. So today we're going to bring you stories, perspectives that will help you to understand what this is. Dr. Bernadette Kilo, Cameroonian, studied medicine in the University of Medicine Dominica and has been a very, very student voice in this sector for many years. I listened to her at this conference, and you tell me afterwards exactly whether I was right to bring her on to Wired Differently. Wired Differently. That's exactly what Dr. Bernadette Kilo is. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Can I call you Bernadette?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I like to interchange though. I could also call you Reverend Dr. Kilo. Tell us, what is this autism? ASD, autism spectrum disorder, right?
Absolutely. Autism spectrum disorder is actually a neurological developmental delay. I actually tell a lot of parents that it is not a stagnation, it is only a delay. And so the neurological system is still developing. And it is marked by persistent social communication and social interaction, as well as stereotypical mannerisms or atypical behaviors.
Let me just stop you a little bit.
Sure.
I have to, I said I don't know much about this, but you've been flying different terms, neurological delay, stereotypical mannerisms, social, cultural, all that. One of the things from this conference is we should be voices, be a voice.
Right.
And that's what we're doing on Wired Differently. And what we'd like to do is to be able to talk to the basest of human beings. to help them to understand. I'm just saying that you need to help us a little bit.
Absolutely.
And help us to understand all the... You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I'd like you to just break that down. I understand, I mean, there was something that struck me from the conference that you said, or someone said, that there is a delay somewhere. You know, in the normal human being, the brain, there's a part of the brain that develops last, and there's a delay there even for it to really form, to form well. And I'm thinking, okay, and he now said, okay, so if there is actually a little bit of a delay for that to happen in a normal human being, what happens to someone who is autistic?
Absolutely. So I like to give that textbook definition.
Okay.
So I always start with that because I am speaking to a wide variety of people at different levels. And so I usually start with that because that is typically what the average parent who sits in front of a clinician, that is what they will typically hear. Now, a lot of times when that definition is given to a family, it makes no sense to them. And that is because we as humans, how we actually see communication or how we interpret communication is through images, and that's general for everybody. The reason why you and I don't pause to understand that we are actually creating images in our mind every time I speak is because we do it so often that it becomes automatic. Take for example, when I say come here, your brain automatically knows that come here means walk in this direction. So walk towards this person. So it creates an image of you walking towards that person. That message now comes from the brain to your body, goes to your legs, tells your legs, move in this direction. So first you form an image and then the action comes. And so when people say it is a neurological developmental delay, my question is, how does a parent form an image to kind of get a better understanding of what that definition is?
They didn't tell me your son is autistic. They just were like, well, we think that he could benefit from these therapies, and I think they might have said well, he's showing signs of it.
And here is what I tell my parents. Imagine that you're listening to 5 radio stations. All of them are playing at the exact same time, and you have to process all 5 of them at the same time without the ability to shut down any single one. That is what a day-to-day life of someone with autism looks like.
You just did something there, and honestly it's not nice. I used to really think you were a nice person, but you just turned me into a patient. You allowed me to soak in your definition, react the same way, and then you hit me in the solar plexus. Thank you very much. Now, the point for me is, I mean, what you just said now, 5 radio stations playing music, diverse, different genres of music, and then you have to pick everything at the same time. That's like a riot.
Absolutely.
That's what an autistic person has to deal with on a daily basis?
On a daily basis. And on top of that, while they're processing the entire world at the same time, the expectation is that they process every command we give them, not only verbally, but also gesturally, as well as everything that they're absorbing from the environment. Because in order for us to effectively communicate, we have to be in tune with our environment. If you have a balance, which is using your senses, because we all use our senses, that's the only way we truly engage our environment. I'm sitting here, I hear cars honking, I hear cars driving by, but I have the ability to shut that noise out and actually have a conversation with you. And so imagine that I don't have that ability. I can hear the kids playing outside, I hear someone running, I hear the car honking, I hear a car driving, someone is yelling, a ball just got kicked. I'm processing all of that. Of course, there's no way I'll be able to answer your questions and be able to effectively communicate. Now, that's just one aspect of my senses. If I'm hungry and my stomach is growling, then I have to pay attention to my interoceptive senses and try not to respond to it while I'm having a conversation with you.
My question is, what's the makeup? Why do they have to deal with five different things happening at the same time? Is that what a normal human being does, or why are they like that?
Absolutely. So there's the theory of what is called neurological pruning. A typical developing human has the ability to neurologically prune. What does that mean? That means that for every stage, when you're developing, you leave one stage to a next. For example, you have a newborn that is donned with a set of skills. The goal for us humans is to survive. And so we are given a set of skills to survive each stage of life. And so when you have a newborn, that newborn has set skills. When the newborn is living from the newborn stage to the infant stage, they lose those skills in order for them to be able to survive. They do acquire the skills that are needed for survival in the infant stage. But it's necessary that those skills for newborn get resolved. And so when they move from infant to toddler, the skills in infant stage need to be resolved, and so on and so forth. What happens is that in the neurological pruning process, there are neurons that are able to weed out those skills as you move on from stage to stage. The theory is that persons with autism and or autistic individuals do not have that ability. Therefore, they're living from newborn to infant to toddler to preschool and school age and so on and so forth, and adding on skills. If I had to give an analogy to that, it would be like someone who gardens. You have a gardener who has a field of roses, and they're planting roses in their yard. If you want the world to see your beautiful roses, you have to prune your garden because there are going to be weeds. And so every now and then you have to go outside and pluck the weeds, because if the weeds outgrow the roses, you will never get to see the beauty of the roses. And so every time you stand anywhere, even if you wanted to take a picture, all you see are weeds. You don't get to see the beauty of the roses.
So there is overload.
Absolutely. So there is an overload of skill. And a lot of times, because we are programmed to know that by this set age, a child should be exhibiting this, because of the weeds, they overshadow the skills that we are expecting. And so we focus on the weeds rather than looking deeper and seeing the set skill that that child has at that time.
Wow.
Like he had an obsession with, he had this little play school house, and it was set up like a real house, and it had light switches. And he had this obsession with on, off, on, off, on, off. I said, oh, that's interesting. Why do you keep, I'm like in my head, why does he keep doing this?
This description, just helps me to see my brother, 5 years younger. Didn't have an idea exactly what was wrong with him. Till today I still don't know. And I'm thinking now, perhaps that was why he was so happy. When all of us were sad at certain times, and he would be happy. And culturally we all thought this dodoyo, dekpe, mumu. We had all sorts of ways in which we described these children. Now, the question for me is, how really pervasive are these cultural beliefs that maybe it's because there is bad luck in the family, that's why they were visited with a child that wasn't complete, so to say, or maybe there is a situation here, that's why this happened. So we have all sorts of cultural beliefs that are definitely not scientific. You know, I'm wondering what effect does all this cultural nuances, what effects do they have in the way we deal with these children and how they turn out at the end of the day?
The best way for me to put it is, as a people, the one thing that was taken away from us, and I have to take you down the history, is we never got that much access to the education that we have now. If we go back to colonial times. And so when you have a group of people who are already lacking in acquiring knowledge due to lack of access, that poses a challenge for them to get up to par with those who actually have the access to that knowledge. Now, remember I said we are given skills to survive. In order for us as a people who lack access to the appropriate education to understand what was going on, we learned to survive. What did we do? We held onto our cultural beliefs. What happened? Here is what actually happens. When we define something by its challenge, we stigmatize it. As a result, our intuition associates stigma with threat. Threat begets fear, and fear in turn causes us to reject and exclude that which we don't understand from our immediate community. So in order for us to try to survive, that is exactly what we adopted. And that was a detriment and continues to be detrimental to our community at large.
Let's bring it home to Cameroon, where you come from. You grew up in Cameroon?
Absolutely, born and raised.
Did you come across these issues in Cameroon?
Absolutely, I did. But here's the problem. It wasn't called autism. We didn't know that word. I did not know that word. I had no idea what the word autism was growing up in Cameroon. I'll tell you what we had. We had fou. Keep in mind, Cameroon is bilingual.
Yes.
We had fou, which is stupid in French. We had demi-fou, which is half stupid in French. And then we had imbécile, which is imbecile. That's the French. We had mumu, foolish.
You had mumu too in
We do
in
have
Cameroon?
mumu, yes.
Someone, obviously maybe a Nigerian crossover.
So we have those terms. So we used those terms. Autism was not one of them. Autism is not a term that has existed for years. It has not. And so it was found how the term autism came into play. They started seeing everybody was getting a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And then they noticed that there were a group of schizophrenics who were withdrawn to themselves. The word autism means withdrawn into oneself. And so they started getting a diagnosis of schizophrenia with autism. But then came along cases where they were finding an 18-month-old. The question clinicians back then asked themselves, how is it that an 18-month-old can be diagnosed with schizophrenia? And so it had to be changed to infantile schizophrenia. And they're like, no, that still doesn't make sense. And then it changed to infantile autism. And then it moved from infantile autism to autism. And then came a group of other things that were given diagnosis, such as Asperger's, pervasive developmental delay, Rett was one of them, but Rett syndrome was mostly associated with girls. And so when you had this other diagnosis, they realized that, wait a second, autism, PDD, or pervasive developmental delay, or PDD, none otherwise specified, and Asperger's syndrome, they realized that these 4 were presenting in the exact same way. The best way I can explain it to anyone is that think about the 4 siblings who got adopted. They're living in different homes. And every time you leave your house and you go out on the street, you see these 4 kids and you notice that, wow, they have a canny resemblance. They look alike. And you start asking yourself, but where are their biological parents? And so you go on this search to find their biological parents. I usually say there were 4 boys and 1 girl. And so you do a genetic study to see, because you have to confirm, are they siblings for real? Maybe they're not. People look alike, but they're not siblings, right? And so you do a genetic study and you realize that, the girl has a genetic pinpoint something. And so that girl, Rett syndrome, gets removed from that diagnosis. And they're like, no, let's take her to her home, which is genetics. And she's gonna stay there. And now you have these 4 brothers who still look alike. And now we have to figure out who are their parents. And so they start researching and they're studying each one and noticing that they have the exact core deficit: social communication, social interaction, restrictive, repetitive behaviors, patterns, and interests. And so they decided, because these 4 are presenting in the same way, well, let's find a home for them. And so the home Autism Spectrum Disorder was born.
I still want to go back to Cameroon.
Absolutely.
Because what you did was you hopped from Cameroon onto the world stage, and somehow I got lost in between. Now let's go back to Cameroon, and I'm looking at specifics now. Looking at cultural nuances. I mean, how the Africa. I mean, there was something you said first about fear, and how people dealt with that fear and all that, and how it affected the things that they don't know anything about. Instead of trying to understand it, they found ways to build even more fear around it. Now, an autistic individual struggles with, do we call it multidisciplinary issues?
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Okay, and somehow we expect that that child or that individual should still be able to function in the society like everyone. Someone said that the world was not created for the autistic individual. Just exactly what needs to be done to help an autistic individual to function maximally in the society?
Hey man, you have to really just embrace their journey and see the beauty in what they see.
To be honest with you, the world was definitely created for everyone. What makes the world such a beautiful place and a very colorful place is our neurodiversity. So we are all wired differently. And in order for us to live happily together in harmony, we need to embrace each other's wired differentness. And so when we talk about we're looking at Cameroon, and how does the world help people who are on the spectrum? Understanding. Understanding. Keep in mind, we do have things in our culture that we struggle with. Left-handedness, not long ago, was one of them. Left-handedness still remains an issue in some cultures. If you go in some tribes. I was born left-handed.
Okay, because I can see that your left hand is raised above your right now.
Absolutely. I was born left-handed, but that was not something that was culturally acceptable. And so my left hand was bound, and I had to learn how to use my right
Bound?
hand. Yeah.
Is that?
You bind it so the child doesn't use it. You use a bandage,
Yeah.
and you bind it so it doesn't get used. Because I have to raise my hand in class. This is considered disrespectful in the African culture.
Holy moly.
So it wasn't long ago, but we raised awareness. And when was the last time you were walking down the street and you saw someone writing with their left hand and you stopped in your tracks like,
So
you don't do that anymore.
we've dealt with that.
Exactly. It's the awareness. At first, when people saw autistic people, they were like, slowly but surely, they're getting there. Same thing with albinos. There's still certain cultures that do not accept albinos. They see them and they're like, what is this thing?
Okay, let's step away from. I like to listening to some of the people at the conference. I realized that we had quite some people who have achieved a lot, even with autism. And what comes to my mind, therefore, is that yes, you have the high functioning and you have the low functioning, but everyone still has one thing or the other to contribute to society. How difficult is it for society to bring these really high functioning ones who have flashes of brilliance, genius, bring them together to actually solve some of our societal issues? I mean, those who have achieved something, is this something impossible to achieve?
No, nothing is impossible to achieve. A lot of times I don't use the terminology high or low functioning, and that's because I honestly believe that everybody functions at their level of development. And so when we associate or assign language such as high functioning, we overlook the challenges of that individual. That is why you can have high functioning autistic people who have 2 PhDs, 1 master's degrees, but cannot keep a job. They do have social interaction and social communication issues.
Okay.
And so we overlook that and only focus on the academic skills that they have, and we're not paying attention to the challenges that they're really facing. Now let's go to those that we are calling low functioning. When we call someone low functioning, we overlook the giftedness of that individual.
Should that really be the case? For me, the way I'm not, I don't belong to any of the areas, the specialties functioning in that space. But my understanding of high functioning, I think, just basically about degrees, does not really exclude what they struggle with. I mean, you may be the one that completes your sentences and everything looks hunky-dory, but there are other issues that you deal with. I mean, there was a story I watched on one of these social media channels, and the mother was diagnosed as with autism at the age of 44, and she already had a child or 2 who were autistic, and she had to deal with. She didn't really want them. So they felt that she rejected them, whereas she had autism and had the same social skill deficit, kind of,
right.
But at the end of the day, she's been diagnosed and she's documenting her journey, and we're getting to learn a bit here and there. My point is, whether they describe you, I think, because I feel that there's a lot of controversy that's laid on words. For instance, you talk about interventions, or somebody says intervention is a medical whatever, and then you talk about, and I'm like, intervention is English. Intervention for me is somebody is helping to, if the government, for instance, comes up with a policy that says this is how we're going to go, this is how we're going to do, for me it's an intervention, and that's from the layman's perspective.
Absolutely.
I leave all the controversy and all the fight for all the, so I'm just saying,
right.
But isn't there a way? So the question I'm asking basically is, isn't there a way we can harness the qualities of as many of these individuals as we know? The same way we appoint someone to be commissioner of something is the same way we appoint someone who has certain skills in IT, but who wants to function basically in his house, you know. And today we have embraced working from home.
Yes.
Yeah, so that should even make it easy for them. So I'm just saying, isn't there a way we can harness these skills and make it work for the society even more than we're doing at the moment?
Absolutely. There's a lot we can do.
Yeah.
There's so much we can do. We as a people, we first of all have to acknowledge that autism exists, and it has existed in our community. It's existed in the world since way before World War I. There are cases of autism that were described. What is now called autism spectrum disorder has been described as early on as World War I. First, you must accept, you must acknowledge that this thing exists. Two, you have to accept the possibility that it's probably right next door to you or right in your face, staring you every day. And so you have to accept that. And then the third thing is you have to act on it. So acknowledge, accept, and act.
Where is understanding?
Now, understanding is all three of them.
Okay.
Because once you're accepting that, oh yeah, or once you're acknowledging that this thing is there, then you are understanding. That is the journey of understanding.
Okay.
Doing all three is the process to acquiring understanding.
In other words, anyone born with in this way, we all need to understand that there are different things that they can still contribute to the development of society.
Absolutely.
How can we, because I mean, I look at a hyperactive, tantrum directed child, and I'm like, okay, how do we understand how to deal with this child when he comes to a restaurant? How do we understand how to relate with him or her in a way that will make the child even feel at home? How do we make people less judgmental? How do we make them less receptive to the stigma of culture that says shove them away, put them somewhere and forget them? How do we, I mean, these are a lot of questions that, you know, I'm sure that for someone who's been in this sector for a long time, these are questions that I'm sure that you also have, I mean, you've obviously experienced.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as a community, I would say there are a lot of things that we can do better. We already have set things in place. No one is asking anyone to go and change those things. All we're asking is to adapt what you already have in place. Once again, we are all wired differently. If they can't learn the way we teach, then we teach the way they learn.
If they can't learn the way we teach the way
they learn.
they learn.
And we all learn differently, every single one of us.
Okay, why, what's your own with autism? Why are you lifting the banner of autism so trenchantly? Why are you so enamored of this space?
It's quite an interesting combination of things. First of all, I am the proud mother of 3 autistic kids.
3.
And absolutely.
And you still look this beautiful.
Yes. Everything I learned about autism came from the very children that I raised. My first son gave me my PhD in autism. That's what I tell everybody.
But you did not get into autism because of your children?
No.
So why?
I got a call. And
you got a call from God?
No. So I got a call from the company I currently work for. and they thought I would be the best person to run their autism program. That was not the path I was going down. And so...
Okay, let's back up.
Absolutely.
You started working for this company.
I wasn't working for them. I was working for a totally different company.
A different company. You didn't have kids at the time.
I did. I had 3 kids at the time.
You knew they were autistic?
The second one was going through the assessment. It was how I completed the forms that the clinician looked at it and believed that there was something in this girl. And so he placed a call and said, we're running a program here, and I think you'll be the best person to run this program. I was already working for a private practice. I was the physician quality review system for that private practice. And I said, that is not what I want to do. And he insisted and said, if you don't like it, you could leave anytime. 9 years and counting.
And you're still there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, you just dropped a salvo, very, very, what's the word now? Casually. Now, that can't be casual. 3 autistic kids.
Yes.
How?
My gift.
Expound it. I want to understand how you alone, first, let me ask you, describe these children.
So, when I had my first son, classic textbook, I knew it. I saw that he was 6 months old when I first saw the signs. And I was like, yep, I know what this is. But guess what? Everybody around me is like, no, it's a boy. They take forever to grow. Wait. I knew. And there was nothing that was going to convince me otherwise. And so I took the steps necessary.
You were ready?
Absolutely. I was ready because I knew it. And then came my second son. He was different. Different in the, not that there's different in the bad way and different in the good way. But in my mind, he did not present like what the textbook was telling me.
Spectrum.
Absolutely. I wasn't in tune with the spectrum. Keep in mind, I'm still from my first time mom high. And so I wasn't in tune with the spectrum. And so these are the different phases that me as a parent, I have been through. That is why it's easy for me to relate with another mother, because I see the different phases that I too went through.
Different means different. Different doesn't mean good or bad. Different means different. So if you believe, oh no, I have autism and now my life is over and I'm not gonna be able to do anything, then oh no, your life is over and you're not gonna be able to do anything. But if your private logic is, I have autism and I'm gonna find all the ways to support myself and I'm gonna make the best out of my life and be whoever I wanna be, there is so much out there, but we have to first remove that fear.
I'm trying to see exactly what was going through your mind when you had your second child, and you knew also, but well, a different kind of, like you said, what you saw, a bit different from what you saw, for instance, in your first child. Psychologically, where were you?
Psychologically, I was still in a, I would say I was in a stable place, but something happened.
Okay.
Because I had this mindset that, oh yeah, he's too cute, this nice little baby. I don't think he'll meet criteria. But just in case he's going to meet criteria, let me go do intense therapy. And so I did all the intense things. Waited. So I waited it out. Dragged it for a good 3 years with the hope that when I take him to the doctor to get the assessment, they will say, oh no, it's just global developmental delay. And then I got in there. Of course, I do the questionnaires. The doctor does his questionnaires. I knew it. I already knew it. For the first time, I cried. The tears came down. So I understand that mother when she holds back the tears. I could see it inside of her. I know, I can tell.
Third child.
My daughter came along, and of course, once again, I become a different mother. What does the textbook say? Keep in mind the diagnostic criteria for autism is mostly, the research was done on boys. It was never done on girls. So society believed that, oh, it's a boy thing. No, it's a human being thing. The only difference is the research was done only on boys. So it's easier for us to see it in boys than in girls, but it does exist in girls. And so here I am. Keep in mind, I still have that MD. I'm still a medical doctor. And look at my thinking process. Well, I tell myself.
Was that the African with the cultural assumptions and beliefs? Was it lurking somewhere in that makeup?
Hey, it could have been any of those things, you know? I am human too, and it could have been any of those things.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to check whether you're actually human, because I mean, what you've been doing the last few days has been, I'm like, I'm superhuman. You look at me, you know that I'm different. But
It could have been one of those things. It could have been my culture speaking through me in that way. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's a girl. Thank God I am spared. And then
it happened.
Daycare for 9 months. And she never says a word.
Non-verbal.
Zero. Nada. Doesn't talk at home. Doesn't talk at daycare. And so every time I go to pick up this child from daycare, she's always in the corner. And so I asked the teacher, how is she during the day? And this is what the teacher says. Oh, she's fine. She likes to do her own thing, you know. That was my clue that I needed to get her out of there. Because this is an early child. Daycare is an early child. Most of those daycare personnel are trained in early child development. They don't need to have a PhD in it, but they have the basic training. And here I am talking to this daycare personnel, and this woman is telling me, oh yeah, she's fine. She just does her own thing.
Was this in Cameroon or the US?
In the US. I knew immediately that this person, you have it all wrong. So I took her out of there to appease, and I said, I know something is wrong. My husband is like, oh, maybe you're looking too much into this. I said, okay, let's try another daycare. Let's find one that has cameras so that while I'm at work, I am 24/7 on my camera watching. Guess what I did? I did just that. And I'm watching on cameras in a group of class, in a group with her peers, in the playground. Everybody's playing here. My little princess is in the periphery by herself, enjoying her play by herself. That is not typical. If you put two babies in a room that have never met each other, it doesn't matter whether it's a Nigerian baby at that end and the baby at the other end is from Atlanta, Georgia, maybe different races. Put two babies at two ends, guess what they'll do? They will crawl towards each other.
And this didn't happen.
Now this is more than just a baby. And she's not playing with any of her peers.
She's not interacting.
Of course, the red flags were there. But I knew I had to do something when the teacher in her class tells me the story. First, she approaches me to ask me, does your child have siblings at home? I said, yeah, she has big brothers. I already knew where she was going to with this, but I wanted to use that to collect data for myself. And so she tells me, does she talk at home? I'm like, yeah, she does. And so I asked her, why? Why are you asking me these questions? And she was honest. She told me the child has been here for 6 months and has never uttered a word. They ask her, what's your name, how old you are, and she doesn't respond. She doesn't say anything. But that one day in class, they put a board and put shapes. One of the shapes looked like a diamond, but it was on its side. And every time they would have that moment, she's the only child who was in the back, backing the teacher while the teacher is talking with the other kids. And they ask a little boy to identify one of the shapes. This boy stands up, touches the shape and says it's a diamond. From nowhere, this child starts screaming from the back of the classroom, no, no, and she's crying. It's not a diamond. It's not a diamond. And the teacher tries to calm her down.
For someone who's nonverbal?
Exactly. And she says, no, it's not a diamond. 2.5 years old. And the teacher was like, oh, she can talk. Calls her, calms her down, and says, well, would you like to tell us? What is it? Exact words. It's a rhombus. So
Sorry?
they ask, she said it's a rhombus.
What's a rhombus?
I have no idea. Don't ask me. I'm not the mathematician. And they asked her, what is a rhombus?
Please, someone help me there. What's a rhombus? Rhombus. That's a R-H-O-M-B-U-S?
Absolutely. And they asked her, what is a rhombus? And she said it's a quadrilateral.
Is what?
A quadrilateral. She was 2.5.
Lateral.
Absolutely. 2.5 years old.
Jesus is Lord.
But you ask her what's your name and she doesn't answer.
But she knows quadrilateral.
The next day, I went to the office, dropped my bags on the floor, went down on my knees and said, she's got it too. And my colleague is looking at me like, what are you talking about? I said, she has it too. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, she has it too. She has what her brothers have. And he's like, no way. Schedule an assessment.
Question. Genetic?
Yes. Autism is 50% genetic.
So, for your line, I'm sorry if I'm asking a lot of personal questions.
It's okay.
But I think that your experiences will help someone out there to situate him or herself in this entire situation. Genetic, down how many lines, generational, I mean, I'm trying to understand exactly.
Absolutely.
Was that what prepared you?
I would not have known, even for the genetic cases, but it's only when I, of course, look back with the knowledge I have, I can pinpoint relatives. I'm like, oh, yeah, I can tell. But you see, the thing with autism is there isn't a specific autism gene. They haven't found that one gene that we say, this is the autism gene. No.
But the studies are still going on.
As of today, there are 400 plus genes associated with autism spectrum disorder. The complexity of autism is quite varied.
Question, I'm not a science student. How many genes do we have altogether? If you have 400 for autism alone?
So the varying combinations.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So they're seeing deletions, they're seeing duplications, they're seeing other genes that are totally neither deletions nor duplications that are definitely associated with autism, depending on where. What I like to, let me put it this way. You have, consider your genetic makeup, right? Has a GPS map.
Okay.
So when you look at the GPS map, you know exactly that, okay, at number 14, this person stays on street number 14, right? And then you have street number 15, street number 16. Now, some other people that live on street number 13 have some specific characteristics. What they're noticing is that some when you look at that GPS, street number 14, street number 13, street number 15, and street number 17 are showing up with certain similar characteristics if there is a abnormality that's presenting there.
Okay, let's walk away from that because I was getting a bit heavy for me. I want you to, I mean, the way you talk about your children, it's with such pride and such, there is a permanent smile on your face.
Yes.
And you're still smiling now.
Yes, they're my pride and joy. Absolutely.
How are they different? I mean, you were describing them, that one is this, one is this, one is this. I like to understand that.
Absolutely.
Because I think that for you to understand all that might give somebody out there a pause to think and see what are these things about this child that I have abandoned. You know, what are the things that he or she has that, you know, are just for him, him.
Absolutely. So with my first son, keep in mind, I didn't know much about autism when I was raising him. And so I got curious. I wanted to help him. And so I decided to study for myself. And I started reading. I read as much research books. And every time he went to therapy, I had a notebook like this. I have stacks and stacks of books like this. And I'll just sit and observe this child. When he made, I write it down. And I put the time. And I would put what was going on at that moment. Was he eating? Was he playing? Was he listening to music? I wrote down everything. And then at night, when everybody's gone to bed, I take that book and I read it. I'm like, and then I started noticing patterns and realized that for every time this child rocked, hummed, looked around, did something that was not typical, he was communicating. That was my introduction to autism as a language. I knew I had to master the language, and I sure did master that language. Every music that child plays, he's very music inclined. So for every music he played, it took me a while to understand that he was using music to communicate with all of us. We just thought he's just listening to music. And then I started paying attention. When I would scroll, once again, at nighttime, when everybody's sleeping, I'm studying. I would take my phone and I would scroll to see what songs he listened to. And the songs gave me an idea of how his day went in school. And I said, oh my God.
That's like reading code.
Exactly. Autism speaks. You just have to learn not to use your ears. Use your heart.
Or your mind.
Absolutely. And so that was how I learned that this thing is a language. And you have to understand the language to be able to communicate with the other person. My second son was the child who saw numbers in everything.
Numbers.
Numbers is his thing.
Mathematics.
That's why we call him the mathematician. The first one, we call him Beat Boy. He creates beats. That's his thing. Yes. If you call my house right now, more than likely, my first son, there are two songs. If he's listening to Afrobeat, he listens to all kinds of music. If he's listening to Afrobeats, there are two songs he's going to listen to. Collabo and So-So. He plays that all the time. Those are the first two songs he listens to. My second one, he sees numbers in everything.
What does that say to you when he's listening to Collabo and So-So? I mean, does it, I mean, you just said a lot of this indicates communication. Like he's trying to talk to you guys. So what do you think he was trying to say?
You have to put it in the context. You have to. I'll give you a classic example. I came home one day and I was upset. By the way, I do not set limits for, or I don't lower my expectations for my kids. They have the same expectations as the kids next door or my cousins, nephews. Everybody has the same expectations, whether you're verbal or non-verbal. You get the same expectations.
What do you mean by expectations? Because
that means everybody gets chores at home. You're expected to do your chores. If I tell you, and I know that me telling you verbally, you're going to forget, of course I put pictures for you. Your job is to go look at the pictures, know what chore you're supposed to do, and get your chore done.
I see the mother just came out.
Yes.
The guy, sure, John, you know, the mother just came out. I mean, I knew you couldn't be all together pleasant and all that. There had to be those very heavy genes out there. Okay.
Yeah.
The mother came out, okay.
And so I came home one day and the cushions are on the floor. The table is a mess. Books are scattered all over the table. People have done homework and they've not put their stuff back in their backpack. And so I'm upset. I just came home from work. Why do I have to come home from work after a long day and start cleaning up? No, I'm not doing that. So I start yelling at her, you need to clean up this place, clean it up. And I said, please clean up. And while I'm saying please clean up, I go around and start picking up papers that I see on the floor. And while I'm picking up these papers, I'm talking to myself. And I'm saying, man, this is so stressful. Keep in mind, I'm talking to myself in my head. I'm like, man, this is so stressful. Why do I have to come home and have to clean after people? I don't like this. I'm complaining, whining. I'm pretty much throwing a tantrum in my head. My son grabs me by the hand, pulls me to the couch. And when he gets to the couch, he pushes me
down,
puts both hands here, pushes me to sit down, takes the remote control, turns on the TV, goes to YouTube and searches the song. He types in. By the way, he can read. He's been reading from age 3.
All right.
He just doesn't verbally express.
Okay.
And he can write his thoughts. And so he types on the screen a song. He searches the song. It's Peter Pan, Lost Boy. That's the name of the song. Put me down. And I was getting upset, like, what? Please, I have work to do. I need to go make dinner. And I wanted to stand up, and he pushes me down.
So that got your attention?
Yes, he put his hand and pressed it down, and I sat down, and he played the song. Once there was, it's a storyline, you have to listen to the song. And pretty much, I sat there, listened to the song, and I cried.
Wow.
My son is telling me, I know I am different. Please be patient with me.
End of discussion. Wow.
That was the summary of that song.
Well, you know, you needed to listen. You needed to be receptive.
Mm-hmm.
You needed to hear.
Yeah.
What if in that state of utter helplessness, frustration, maybe you hit out at him or something? Could have lost that child.
Yes, absolutely. That is why I plead with families, I plead with parents, be patient. They do talk. They speak. Autism speaks. But we've been wired to constantly use our ears. We have to use all our senses to take in what it is they're telling us.
A mother's job is never done.
No.
Ordinarily,
Yeah.
a mother's job is never really done. But in this situation, I mean, I see the time that you've put in this. And that says that every mother has to also do the same. Mother, father has to do the same. Maybe because I hear, I mean, I was at the clinic and I saw quite a lot of mothers. I'm not sure I saw too many men.
Yeah.
Our fathers, we need to do more. We need to rise up. We need to meet the challenge. It's not just about the women. Fathers need to get up. Fathers need to do what they need to do to support our women. Create time. It's not just about making money. You both created this child, and you need to also give attention to this child, to what the child needs. It's very important. It's very vital. We can't leave all that to our mothers to do. I mean, what I see in the story you told me about your 3 kids, essentially, is the quality of time that you've put in to be able to understand them. And hearing about your frustrations also says that, yes, there will be days, right?
Absolutely.
There will be days when things can go south.
Yeah.
But then you always have to find a way to bring yourself back.
Absolutely.
This is my child. And I
Yes.
must do everything to ensure that I help the child to grow the way he or she needs to grow. The use of technology, how does it help autistic individuals to be better able to take care of themselves or to be a bit more independent in what they do? Is it good? Is it, does it, like for instance, your child loves music, and obviously he has to use technological devices to get there.
Yeah.
You know, what's your experience with technology, and what are the other things within this axis that can help an autistic individual to grow, to be better?
Absolutely. So there's a lot technology can do for people who are on the autism spectrum or autistic individuals. Let's take the case of an individual who is nonverbal. Technology will give them an opportunity, or it gives them the ability to be able to communicate in a different way. And so they're able to actually, to some extent, be able to advocate for themselves, as well as be able to lead some type of autonomy on their personal lives. And so that's where that part of technology will come in. Now, like I said, if they can't learn the way we teach, then we teach the way they learn. Without a doubt, we know, the research shows it, that a lot of autistic kids are able to learn, they pick up things on their own. And so that's another area. Are we saying that, oh, just because they can do that, you just shove them with all the technology and say, go live a happy life? No. Like any other child, you have to regulate, you have to set limits as to what they have access to and what they can do on those technology. You don't just give them the technology and say, hey, live a happy life.
I think someone said the difference is to be accommodated instead of cured. Are we saying that there is no cure for autism?
So a lot of times I don't use the word cure when it comes to autism. And this is the reason. When we're looking at a condition that is neurological, how then do we go in there and neurologically rewire the wired different? And so what we do, if we had to go back to the theory of neurological pruning, what we do is to provide them with the tools to be able to not only acquire the skills that they need, but also master those skills so that they can achieve their full potential. And so the word cure does not exist at all in my vocabulary. It's just like us. I'll go back to the left-handedness. There's no pill I can give someone to say, uh-oh, your child is left-handedness. Yeah, take this pill, they'll become right-handed tomorrow. It's a neurological difference.
I mean, there's a difference to that. The fact that someone is left-handed doesn't mean the person isn't intelligent.
Absolutely. It's the same thing with autism. just because someone has autism, I have seen a lot of people, even those that we think, because of the acronyms at the back of their name, are still autism illiterate and constantly associate intelligence or the lack thereof intelligence to autistic individuals. To date, the science world still does not know why cognitive ability, when you look at autism as a stand-alone diagnosis, why cognitive ability isn't impacted. Only 1/3 of people with autism spectrum disorder have an associated intellectual disability.
Okay. That's very important. I mean, there's something I learned about autism itself. May provide certain delays, but it does not mean that it's the cause of other associated conditions that may attach itself to, to what happens to a child. I mean, I think I heard about a child who hits his head on the wall on a regular basis and all that. That there may be other mental conditions that needs to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
Apart from, so it may not really be autism itself.
Exactly.
But other things that needs to be dealt with to.
Because if you look at the child, and this is the science that has shown that, if you look at the child that has just that diagnosis of autism, their IQ is average to above average. When you have the IQ that's below, you start looking into other comorbid conditions. Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
That is resulting in the ID, the intellectual difference.
Wow. There's still a lot I'd like to take you on, but I think we've been talking for more than an hour. Because if you had to give a checklist, we've talked about understanding, and in that we have subtext of acceptance, of acknowledgement, and support. If you had to do a checklist to a mom who has to deal with an autistic person, if you had to do a checklist for coming from someone who's managing 3, and excellently too, how would that checklist go?
I have 3 things. I guess I will honor the 3 that gave me that knowledge. And so the first thing I tell and these I give to my mothers or to my families, the first thing I tell any family is to understand the child as an individual. You have to know the child as an individual, not John that is different from James. No, John is John, James is James. So know the child as an individual. That's number 1. Number 2, know the diagnosis that the child has. In this case, since we speak of autism spectrum disorder, I need for you to have an understanding of what that diagnosis is and how it is impacting that child. Don't try to compare your child with the neighbor's child who has the same autism spectrum disorder and say, no, my child does not do that, therefore he's okay. No. Know just the autism spectrum disorder. Number 3, know the child with the diagnosis. So those are 3 components that I want you to focus on. First, know the child as an individual. Second, know the diagnosis that comes with the child, autism spectrum disorder in this case. Number 3, know the child with autism spectrum disorder. If you master these 3 things, you would have decoded 90% of some of the things that you are stressing about.
We have been speaking with Dr. BERNADETTE Kilo, graduate of the University of Medicine in Dominica, and she's been talking about autism and the struggles and the triumphs and what the future should be like. Honestly, what I take away from this is that for parents, work is never really done. And it's important that men, we need to get up to support our women. We need to get up to support mothers who are doing a lot to help these children who are not disadvantaged, so to say, but they are critical pegs of our society if only we can see differently. It's been wired differently, and we will bring you another episode very shortly. And I thank you for coming on today's program.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Wired differently. Thank you. Thank you.